Hey, welcome back to another edition of the preview show. This week's edition we're going to be focusing on the Wells Fargo Championship at Quail Hollow on the PGA Tour. I'll touch briefly on the Golf Sixes tournament on the European Tour at Centurion Club. So back to sort of normality on the PGA Tour, 72-hole stroke play event at Quail Hollow. Quail Hollow was the scene of the US PGA Championships last year, which Justin Thomas won. This event last year was actually played at a completely different course. So if you're looking kind of at last year's results as maybe where you're going to put your money this week, I would advise don't, because it was played at obviously a completely different course. Quail Hollow is kind of notorious for being known as a driver's paradise. Long and straight will win you here, although in fairness you could probably relate that to most weeks regardless on the PGA Tour. But in particular here, certainly driving the ball long and straight is really important. If you're wayward off the tee, the rough is really penal, so it's kind of known as a very difficult course with the green mile to finish it off, 16, 17, 18. So in terms of that and looking forward to this week, I think those who drive the ball well will stand you in good stead. And if we touch on the field briefly, it's a high quality field. People have kind of had their break from the Masters. You've got Tiger back, Rory, Phil, Patrick Reed, Jason Day, Justin Thomas, Ricky Fowler, Fleetwood, Matsuyama. It's just stacked, an absolutely stacked field. So I think we're in for a real treat this weekend. In terms of where to look at, I would be surprised if kind of not one of the big boys would win it this week. Rory's track record here is amazing. It was the scene of his first PGA Tour win back in 2010 when he won shooting a final round 62. I think when he won a couple of years later as well, he shot 61 on the Saturday. So he can go low at this course. There's no two ways about it. I think he's played here 8 times with 7 top 10s. So understandably, he's the favourite this week, closely followed by Justin Thomas and then Ricky Fowler. For me, I'm actually going to go my winner this week. I'm going to go Ricky. His track record here is very strong. Tied second here at the US PGA last year. He's got 3 other top 5s and a couple of the top 15s in this event. So it's obviously a course he likes, he plays well. I think 11-1 is not bad odds as well for him. So I expect him to do well this week. In terms of each way bets, it's a fascinating field because if you look at the history of how people have done well at this course, there's quite a few different areas you could go in. You've got like guys like Phil Mickelson, who just like a top 10, top 15 machine at this place, which is a bit ironic considering he doesn't really keep it on the planet with his driver, but he's certainly worth a punt. He's at 25-1, same odds as Tiger, but I fancy him a lot more than I do fancy Tiger. Not because I don't believe in Tiger's resurgence this year, but just depends on how he plays it. If he plays his driver a lot, I just don't fancy him to do that well because he's not shown at the minute. He's sort of over, I think he's 202nd I saw off the tee with his driver on the PGA Tour in terms of stats. That's not going to get many things done. So if he does take the driver this week, I don't expect him to be too near the top, although you just never know with him. So certainly Phil as an each way bet is not bad, but he's not the one I'm going to go with this week. I'm going to go with a guy kind of bucks the trend for not being a long hitter, but did particularly well at the US PGA here and has come into a bit of form and was good last week at the Zurich Classic in New Orleans. That's Kevin Kisner. Kevin Kisner last year was a top 10 machine. He sort of went off the ball back end of last year after the US PGA and after the President's Cup and was a bit slow at the beginning of this year, but last couple of tournaments has just started to show up. Played very well last week, the Zurich Classic, coming second again in that event for the second year running. I just fancy him at 40-1 each way, and bearing in mind how well he played at this course last year, I think he's in for a decent week, and a 40-1 is a good bet. Another couple of names to maybe look out for from an each way perspective, maybe Luke List at 60-1, and the other guy I really like is Francesco Molinari at 70-1. Again, he did very well at the US PGA. He's also got a couple of top 20s in this event previously, so a bit of pedigree there at that course. Again, not longest hitter, but he keeps it in play. He's got great iron play. So I do like those are kind of my each way bets, and I'll give you a few there, but there's certainly ones I would certainly look out for. And in terms of outsiders, again I've gone quite American heavy this week, but Lucas Glover and Grayson Murray, both at 110 to 1. Lucas Glover's a fascinating individual to me. Obviously won the US Open in 2009. Very strong off the tee, very strong long game. He sort of disappears for tournaments and months at a time and turns up, but he seems to turn up at the same sort of venues. And again, he's somebody who's got a bit of pedigree here at Quail Hollow, finished high before, so 110 to 1. He's had a bit of form this year, so it's not a bad bet. But I think Grayson Murray out of the two is probably one I would lean towards. As an individual, I'm not necessarily sure I agree with a lot of things he says and does on Twitter in particular, but as a player, you can't doubt his skill and talent. He's, I think, 4 top 20s in his last 5 events. Hits the ball a country mile, so he's certainly worth keeping an eye on as an outside bet. Moving on to European Tour. So the European Tour has their pairs event this week, which is the Golf Sixes. Started, the inaugural tournament was last year, which was won by the Danish team. The format is 4 groups of 4 teams, mostly different countries, although there are a couple of European women that are going to be playing. There's a couple of teams of European women, and the Solheim Cup captain Katrona Matthew and Ryder Cup captain Thomas Bjorn are paired together as a European captain. So European Tour kind of doing things a little bit differently, a bit of a fun event meant for, I suppose, getting a different audience, a more interested audience. So what they'll do on the Saturday, if I remember rightly, Saturday's event is the round robin of the groups. Everybody plays each other, and then the top 2 teams in each group go through to the knockout stages the next day, and it's basically greensums over 6 holes. So everyone takes a tee shot, then alternate shot in from there. There's a couple of holes I remember have got a shot clock. There's longest drive on one hole as well. So lots of different things going on throughout the weekend. Just a really sort of fun weekend. In terms of who to bet here, the Danes are the favourites. I think closely followed by the Spanish and the French and English teams. It's a bit of a crapshoot. I don't really know who to go with. I'm going to go with the team that kind of will make me smile probably the most over the weekend. That's the Thais. Kiradech Afebarnrat and Tongchai Jaidi, both great characters. Afebarnrat's one of the best players I think who's probably going to be playing this weekend. He might even be the highest ranked player this weekend. So a bit of quality, and Tongchai Jaidi is just a great character in himself. So I'll look out for the Thais, but I'll certainly be interested to see how the women get on as well. And I think they're playing from forward tees; they're not playing from the same tee. So I think they'll be seriously competitive as well. So it'll be interesting to see how they do. So there you have it. Wells Fargo this week, I think it's going to be a quality tournament, and obviously leading up nicely into the Players next week. And then you've got over in the European Tour, a bit of more of a fun weekend in the Golf Sixes. Let me know your thoughts, comments, who you think might do well this weekend on either event. And until next week, cheers.